Good morning, PBF. It's Charlie, and I'm here with Fuller Seminary's Associate Professor of Youth, Family, and Culture, Stephen Argue. I heard Steve speak at a youth ministry conference in January, and I remember thinking, man, I wish I could just bottle these ideas and bring them back to our congregation at PBF. Now, unfortunately, Steve didn't agree to my proposal to place him in a bottle. Yeah, it was actually kind of an awkward conversation.
That was very awkward.
But I thought the next best thing would be inviting him to do one of our PBF Zoom interviews. So Steve is coming to us from Fuller Seminary in Pasadena, California, where he's training the next generation of church leaders. His area of research focuses on emerging adults and specifically on how emerging adults perceive and work through spiritual struggle. So as the high school director at PBF, the big message I heard from Steve wasn't just observing how emerging adults process change, but translating those lessons into meaningful ways that the church can encourage and support emerging adults. His recent book, Sticky Faith Innovation, follows up on the work of Sticky Faith and the Fuller Youth Institute to expand on how adults in the church can use empathy, creativity, and courage to grow and support lifelong faith in teenagers. So thank you for joining us today, Steve.
Hey, Charlie, it's so good to be with you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a little more about your work at Fuller and your area of research? And I'm thinking specifically of people who might be listening and wondering, what sort of research questions does a professor of youth, family, and culture ask?
That is a great question, even in and of itself. So, I think when you think about professors, sometimes you can think of them as just sort of these people that think deep thoughts all the times. But I like to tell my students that most of academics really is autobiographical. It's usually us working out some of our own questions. And I've been a youth pastor. I've worked long and hard with young people over the years. And I think as I've seen, Charlie, like you, my high school students graduate and go on to whatever's next, it raised a lot of questions about this age group of emerging adulthood, which is 18 to 29, and just sort of asking what a lot of people are asking, where are they going? What do they need? What is their relationship with the church and spirituality and all that comes with that? So what I get to do at Fuller is I get to teach seminary courses. I actually teach a course on emerging adulthood spirituality. And then I get to work with the Fuller Youth Institute, where we actually work very closely with churches, conducting research on youth ministries and churches pertaining to adolescents and emerging adults. And this is kind of the way it works. I mean, you ask questions and you seek answers, and those answers raise more questions and you keep going. And if we can take those questions and turn those into helpful resources for the people like you that are serving young people in our churches all around America, then we feel like we're doing hopefully some good work.
Yeah, as a high school youth pastor, I feel just a little tiny bit of what parents must feel, just like that awake at night, can't go to sleep. What happens when they graduate, right? Yeah. What will happen next? And when you look at the church in America, what's your thermometer say? How is the church doing in terms of ministering to emerging adults?
Well, I think it depends. I think there are flashes of beauty and some great things that some churches are doing. And at the same time, I think that the church oftentimes doesn't really understand the emerging adult experience. And a lot of churches are sort of geared toward family, and most emerging adults who are single or sort of navigating their way through their 20s don't always know where they fit in the church simply by their programming or the way it's set up. So, I think there's a lot of work to do. And at the same time, I think there's hope as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm reminded, someone said that Paul and Jesus were both single adults and there would be no programs in the modern American church.
There'd be no place for them. We wouldn't know what to do with them. And I think that's sometimes the question that I get from a lot of ministry leaders is like, where are they? How do we get them back? And what are we supposed to do with them if we do, other than stick them in a singles ministry or ask them to serve in children's ministry? None of which is necessarily wrong, but I think we just need to recognize the fact that there's more going on with emerging adults, and I think they're looking for support and resource from amazing churches that have amazing people in them.
Yeah, then this is a great opportunity to plug our youngish programming, which is catered to people 20 to 40, single or married. So gonna throw that one out there.
Absolutely.
So, Steve, what would you say to someone who's listening to this interview and thinking, I don't know anything about kids these days, or what am I supposed to do about youth ministry or emerging adults?
Yeah, I think if you say, I don't know about anything about kids these days, I think I would just say, congratulations for being honest about that. I find that there's a lot of adults that think that because they were teenagers or in their 20s once, that they understand teenagers and 20s today. And things have changed. I mean, the world has changed, and it doesn't in any way diminish your experience as a teenager or a person in their 20s. Um, but to admit that you don't know actually is the starting point, because then you can kind of go, okay, well, how do I know? And how do I begin to understand the stories of young people? And, I think a lot of times it starts with us looking for young people again, and searching them out and being willing to be curious about their lives rather than assume things about their lives. The moment we assume is the moment we distance ourselves from people, whether it's in ministry or any relationship, right? But if we take the time to really stop and kind of say, well, who are you and what's your story and what's important to you? I think we begin to understand our young people again. And I think young people want to be understood. I don't think they want to be misunderstood, but sometimes they're actually afraid of adults because they don't want to let them down. And so I think sometimes I remind my parents and leaders that when it comes to understanding young people, adults need to go first. They're the ones that need to kind of take that generous step toward them and be open and curious about their lives and really begin to try to nurture that conversation. But I think that young people are looking for adults to believe in them with no strings attached, to see them for who they are, to believe in what they can be. And I think young people would hang around churches all around America if they knew that that was the kind of place that was available. And I just think there are amazing people in churches that have lived incredible stories, people in your church that I think young people want to rub shoulders with if given the chance. And so, I think our posture and that narrative can maybe even change the way we think about the way we interact with young people.
So good.
Mm.
So what's one thing for those who aren't youth pastors or who aren't currently serving in youth ministry, what's one thing that you would hope parents, grandparents, elders, or other pastors and adults listening today would hear about ministering to emerging adults in 2021?
So my colleague Kara Powell and I, we wrote another book called Growing With, and it's really directed at parents who are trying to grow with their adolescents and emerging adults, which is really a sort of an interesting phenomenon. Like, not only do you have this this interesting journey for those in their 20s, but it also raises interesting questions about the relationships that they have with their families. And a lot of parents sort of are shrugging, and grandparents are shrugging their shoulders going, I'm not sure what it means for me to parent them. This is sort of a new territory for me as well. So here's what I'd say. First of all, a promise. Some of the research would suggest that your relationship with your emerging adult child or grandchild actually gets better as they get older. So if you've had a rough, bumpy relationship with your child or grandchild as a teenager, the research seems to suggest that it actually can get better. And if you had a great relationship, it can still even get better. And so I just want to offer that hope for those of you that maybe feel a little bit discouraged. And the other thing I'd say is this, is that your past doesn't have to define your future. Like, there's always a chance to start over. There's always a chance to redeem the relationship. There's always the possibility to step a little bit closer to those that you love. And, a lot of times I think that we think that young people need to make that move, especially if we've blown it. And I would just say, have the courage to continue to pursue your teenagers and your emerging adults. They want you, even if they don't always communicate like they do. Your presence is really, really important. And what's so interesting is that it's not just for parents, but it's for grandparents as well. In some of my own research with college students, you would be surprised at the number of comments that these college students that I interviewed brought up about their grandparents. Like, even if they don't call you that much, or you don't go on social media, grandparents, it's okay. Your presence in their lives is deeply significant to them. And I hope that makes you just smile a little bit and recognize the fact that no matter how much you connect with them, you're really important to them. And maybe we just need to be reminded of that. I think sometimes we're so caught up in all our differences that we forget there's actually quite a bit of overlap and quite a bit of hope resting in these really, really important relationships. And so let me leave you and encourage you with that.
That is so good. Thank you so much for that, Steve. And yeah, your work is so important to the church, especially in an era when it feels like generations are just not connecting. And I think we all need a reminder to be better listeners. So just listening now, I'm reminded that even though he was God, right, Jesus spent a lot of his time on earth asking and listening to people, practicing that holy curiosity, and just eating and walking with people. So yeah, church, I would recommend picking up Sticky Faith Innovation for a framework, like Steve said, to transform your intergenerational relationships. Thanks again, Steve, for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
Hey, Charlie, it's been great to talk with you. I wish we could go on forever, and blessings to you and your faith community. I'm grateful for what you all do. Grace and peace.